to introduce this film tonight, we have executive producer and founder of Excellent Cadaver. Please welcome Jennifer Lawrence.
Hi, thank you for being here. Thank you, Dominic and IDA. Thanks for being here tonight to witness the unthinkable trauma that these three brave women continue to live throughout as our rights are under attack. What you're about to see is a raw and intimate look at the lives of Amanda Zurawski, Samantha Cassiano, and Dr. Austin Denard, and their fearless attorney from the Center for Reproductive Rights, Molly Duane, who's fighting tooth and nail against these lawmakers and politicians in the hopes that no other individual will experience what these women have gone through. I'm so moved by their stories and the heroism of these incredible women. Abortion has been on the lips of politicians for far too long. There is nothing more deeply personal to a woman or to families than the birth or the loss of a child. This film so beautifully weaves these women's stories, and the women themselves are so incredible to bear witness to that it's no wonder films like this can change the world. This election, women's lives literally depend on you and your vote. Thank you.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
This is an incredible piece of work, of journalism, storytelling, of advocacy, bearing witness to this testimony, especially that we see in the courtroom and at home behind the scenes. Maisie, you had made a film called Jackson, which was about the last abortion clinic in Jackson, Mississippi. Can you talk about how this project started for you, Abbie, how you came on and sort of just like what the start of this was? Was it just like hearing about this case and hitting the ground running, or like what was the start of this?
Well, I was in the clinic in Mississippi the day that Roe was overturned. Wow. And Abbie and I knew, I think probably 6 months prior, when the oral arguments were being heard in Jackson Women's Health Organization v. Dobbs. And that afternoon, the clinic director from Jackson Women's Health Organization had called Abbie and I and was devastated by the oral arguments. And I think it became clear to us that, it was just a matter of when the decision was going to come down. And so we had really begun researching back in early 2022. And we had done a number of, spent a tremendous amount of time with different individuals going through different things in this new landscape in post-Roe America. And when we heard that this case was being filed, we really, I guess, almost pivoted, because we knew this was the first time that someone was fighting back. We had seen so much devastation. We had ridden with, women out of state to get abortion care, and we just had not seen any sort of hope. I mean, it was constant, just, there really is no other word but devastation. And so when Molly filed this suit and we had a relationship with the center already, we very quickly started filming with Molly and the plaintiffs.
It's interesting, mentioning that you said, like, you had seen so much devastation, but this was the first time that people were fighting back. Like, I remember the film After Tiller, which is an incredible film about late-term abortion doctors. And Lana Wilson and Martha Shane made that film, but they don't show any of the women's faces in that film. And now it's sort of, it feels like this moment of like releasing this shame and saying, like, this is not my fault. This is not my shame to carry. I didn't do anything wrong. This is the state's, this is the legislature's failure to keep women alive and healthy and, to endanger them in such a way. So I think it's so, I think part of what is making me so emotional about watching this film is like this incredible testimony and these people who are, sharing their stories so bravely and like saying like, stand with me and fight together. So that must have just been so inspiring.
Well, I think it's interesting. Abbie and I were at 2 different screenings this weekend. I was in Boston at FallDocs, and Abbie was in Chicago at the Chicago International Film Festival. And we both had groups of women who had either helped provide abortion during pre-Roe or received illegal abortions pre-Roe. And I know the women that I spoke with said, we didn't tell our stories, and that's how we got here. And we're just so honored and in awe of the women in the Zurawski case.
Yeah, I mean, there was a necessity to be anonymous for so long. Yeah. And that's something that some women from the Jane Collective came, and to see how long this fight has been going on, and to be in the room with people who fought and then watched this backslide. I think what you walk away with it is that these women choosing to tell their stories now is changing the whole conversation. There's no silver lining of Roe falling. There's been nothing positive to come of it. But what we are seeing is that people are organizing and people are coming forward. And Amanda really started that. And it's incredible to see how much that has changed it for women and how many women have come forward in her footsteps and are, forming an army together.
I mean, opening with that testimony that hits right before the title is so powerful. Was that ever not going to be the beginning of your movie, or?
I mean, I think that was always a very strong contender for being the opening. And I think it was really solidified with one of the first times we met Amanda, when she confirmed what we had seen in the footage, that Lindsey Graham had rolled his eyes.
Yeah.
And we felt like it was just so symbolic of the dismissiveness that's still happening with a lot of women's stories in the current political landscape. You have one party that just continues to not believe women. Yeah. And that's what we felt like she was having to endure with some of the individuals in that room. Yeah. And so it was the perfect way to really say, okay, this is what's happening in America. Women are coming forward, they're using their names, and they're telling people what's happening to them. And you have half of this country listening and the other half ignoring it.
I think in terms of the filmmaking and the structure, it's very much this sort of legal thriller almost. And I kept almost waiting for a moment where you would be and this is the backstory of Amanda or Samantha or Molly. But we really just get their character through action. I mean, did you ever think oh, maybe we should do a little bio of, or was it just no, we're just observing, we're going to see who they are, as, in the moment of this trial? And
I think, and Abbie, you can add to this, but something for me, when we met all of these women, this is the first film that I've ever made where we didn't have to spend extensive time gaining access and gaining their trust. Because Molly had established that and Molly trusted us, the participants in this film also trusted us. And so what that meant was we were just immediately met with vulnerability and intimacy. And so we were experiencing this shift in who they were through their reproductive journeys and this courtroom journey. And so we didn't really feel the need to dig into what their backstories were, because the real story and the characters that we were wanting to showcase were what was happening right now and how they were transforming in real time.
Yeah, I would also say that what Amanda went through, what all of them went through, was the inciting incident that completely changed who they were. And so I think just going with them from that moment into the future made the most sense for us, because you want to just be on that journey with them and really feel it in real time, because they are. And something that came up really early on when talking to Amanda was that yes, the initial event was traumatizing, but there's so much trauma that persists, and so many events that bring that back up over and over. And so it was so important for us to really stay in that moment with them, alongside them, and experience it with them.
Yeah, and to stay with them after this big moment, to see how they're, are they going to pursue having kids? Are they going to have a, tubal ligation? How are their marriages doing? How are their mental health issues doing? I mean, that I think is so powerful to see just the fallout from such a traumatic event. It's not just like, oh, well, you had a healthy pregnancy. Or like you had a healthy pregnancy after this really traumatic, horrible thing or whatever happened. It's like, I think that's kind of how people look at it. Like, oh, this bad thing happened and then now you're okay. Or you survived or whatever. Right. So I think that continuing to look at not only their continued advocacy, but like their continued struggle is like really, really important for the story itself, for this ongoing story especially.
Well, and the duality of it, that they're having to be strong and stoic and public with their stories, but also having to wrestle with the trauma privately and what that does in their marriages and in their lives. And I think, like, more to your point about like backstory, or even I think like a lot of what we wanted to do was keep it in the present and keep it as raw and intimate as possible. And we didn't want to really like play with any sort of like experimenting with like the form, or even like getting too aesthetically being too aesthetically focused. We just wanted to keep it very raw and very in the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's a very effective choice. I mean, it felt very efficient. Like we're just in it right away. There's not a lot of lead up or build up to this. It's very like, okay, here we go. Also, this isn't even a question. I just have to say, those state lawyers made me so mad. I was like, how can you sit here as women and do this? I don't know. I mean, sorry, this isn't even like a moderator question. I'm just like, that made me furious.
But I think like something that's really interesting to add to that the lawyer in the Kate Cox hearing, the gentleman who argues that the state is only party that's harmed, came to our first public screening in Texas. Oh my gosh. He wasn't invited, but there was no one invited. He just bought a ticket and came.
And did anybody talk to him?
No, we weren't supposed to be there because it was just like a public screening, and I went to meet a couple of friends there and saw him come in, and I wasn't going to stay, and then I got cozy in my seat because I wanted to see what would happen, and he was the first person to leave and ran out like very urgently texting, and I was curious what would happen the next day. And I think throughout all of this, you have to hope that at some point the state will stop and pay attention to what is being said, what the stories these women are telling, and I don't know. I guess I had hope that I'd wake up in the morning and they would, want to change the law, but that's obviously not happening.
It's just like, I simply can't understand the absolute refusal to not listen or comprehend what these people are saying, whether it is the lawyers, whether it is the Supreme Court, whether it is the medical board, even, who kind of gave a not really answer on that question. It's just shocking that women have to, put on display their worst, most harrowing moments of their lives, and people are not even listening. And in fact, they are receiving threats from this attorney general. So anyway, I'm just ranting at this point in time.
Well, I think it's, we felt that throughout the filmmaking process. It was really frustrating to be on this journey with these women and see the pain that they're living through every day, to be at Halo's funeral, to be in the courtroom when they were all vulnerable and emotional and sharing their story, and to day in, day out have the state refuse to accept that this is what's actually happening to women, and to honestly be okay with it. They,
right, and not only that, but also you see not only the court reversals that they so quickly throw down, but also, they tried to stop the testimony. They tried to keep the cameras. Yeah. When we approached the court to try and film, they tried to prevent it, and we had to fight for our ability to be in there.
And were you the only cameras allowed in there?
Yeah.
Okay, because I wasn't even sure when we saw, Molly practicing her testimony. I was like, oh, maybe they banned the cameras, but then I think it is so powerful to have captured what you did. To see that testimony especially is like so powerful.
Thank you. And we found out 12 hours before the hearing that we were going to have access. But with that access came the rule that it had to be on a tripod. We couldn't zoom and we couldn't pan and we couldn't move the camera. Once we set it down, that's where it had to roll. So we frantically ran all over Austin looking for the most high resolution camera we could find. And we found one 8K camera. So we used that, which allowed us to punch in. But it also gave us this incredible opportunity to live stream the court hearing. And so we did that so that family members of some of the plaintiffs who weren't in town were able to watch it, and press was able to tune in. Oh, okay. And so it was really this incredible opportunity to be able to really amplify the stories in real time too.
Yeah. And did you request interviews with any of those lawyers or state representatives?
We did not. In my 2016 film, Jackson, I spent a lot of time following the anti-abortion movement. And so I've always said I feel like I told that side of the story, but I also think that Texas is telling their story in this film with the laws and through each woman's experience. And then obviously through their questioning. So I don't think we felt any need.
But also, did Ken Paxton ever tell them they couldn't have an abortion? No. So they didn't interact with them. And so if we're seeing it through their eyes, we're not seeing the state except for the fallout of their laws. Right. And then you do get to hear from Ken Paxton when he specifically tells Kate Cox she cannot have an abortion.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought, but I think that I almost was hoping at a certain point that the new Roe would be Zurawski, but what is it's such a moving target. You can't at a certain point you just have to say stop, because you have the Kate Cox case come in, and I'm sure you were scrambling to film that as well, but at a certain point you have to say this is where we're going to end. But is there any what is going on with Molly and these plaintiffs and what's happening that maybe hasn't ended up on the screen?
Well, the case ended with the Supreme Court decision where they didn't name any woman independently. It just said that the Center for Reproductive Rights filed this suit, and they didn't find that any of the women should have gotten the care that they needed. And the fight continues. It's now I can't remember, how many lawsuits have they filed, Abbie? Do you know?
The center has over a dozen active lawsuits,
and they keep filing more.
Yeah, and a lot of the cases that are like Amanda's in other states are still active, and they've gotten some wins.
They had a win in Tennessee recently. They'll be going to court very soon in Idaho, and so I think they're as strong as they've ever been. And every time we see Molly, and Molly is a part of these panel conversations, she continues to be more hopeful, because more and more people are talking about abortion and are talking about these stories. And I think she continues to think it's going to take a very long time, but that change is happening. And I think for those who understand the anti-abortion playbook, they started as soon as Roe was won, they started chipping away at it. And so in that sense, this case was just the tip of the iceberg, and we have to keep going.
Right. Well, I can't thank you enough for this incredible work, because it is such a huge part of shaking off the stigma, the shame that has come before, and just showcasing these incredible stories. So thank you for this incredible film. I hope as many people as possible get to see it. We are going to go to the bar in the lobby and have some drinks and chat. So please join us there. And thank you both so much.
Thank
Maisie
you.
and Abbie.
Thank you. Thank you.